Jace Carter had always considered himself reasonably lucky, despite current evidence to the contrary. As he stood in the processing line of Delvar IX's infamous detention facility, watching his breath turn to fog in the frigid air, he decided that perhaps his luck had finally run out. Next, barked a guard whose species Jace couldn't identify beneath layers of thermal armor and a reflective visor. Arms out, Jace complied, stretching his arms as a scanner passed over him, mapping every detail of his human physiology. 6 weeks ago, he'd been installing power converters on a mining colony. Now he was prisoner 37291H, charged with sedition against the Galvan Empire for repairing equipment for the wrong people. Human male. Classification, minimal threat. The guard snorted. Lucky you. I was just thinking the same thing. Jace replied with a half-smile. Any chance the minimal threat classification gets me the luxury suite? The guard's response was a shove toward the next station, where a neural implant was injected into his neck. Jace winced, feeling the cold metal burrow beneath his skin. Tracking active, announced another uniformed officer. 37291, H assigned to Block 7. Block 7, as Jace soon discovered, was where the Empire housed its collection of engineers, technicians, and others with useful skills, prisoners who could still serve purpose. The cell was a 10 by 12 chamber, carved into ice and reinforced with metal, shared with 3 other inmates. A thin shelf jutted from each wall, serving as beds. No privacy, minimal heating, and recycled air that tasted like metal. Welcome to paradise, Jace muttered to himself, claiming the empty bunk. One of his cellmates, a blue-skinned humanoid with bioluminescent eyes, glanced up from a battered notebook. You talk to yourself. Typical human behavior. Only when the conversation promises to be intelligent, Jace replied, rubbing his hands together for warmth. I am Tech-Car, the blue alien said without humor. Engineer. Kinda. Power systems specialist. Jace Carter. He extended a hand, remembered most species didn't shake, and awkwardly lowered it. Carter. Tech-Car nodded solemnly. I predict you will survive approximately 4 months. That's encouraging. A third prisoner, bulky and reptilian, growled something unintelligible from the corner bunk. Grish doesn't talk much, Tech-Car explained. Destroyed half an Imperial outpost. Very respected. Jace nodded respectfully toward the large reptilian, who responded with what might have been a nod or simply gas. The fourth occupant hadn't yet acknowledged Jace's existence. She sat on her bunk, back straight against the wall, eyes half closed. Humanoid, but definitely not human. Her skin had a subtle silvery sheen, and her ears tapered to elegant points that extended several inches upward. Her dark hair was cropped short, yet somehow maintained an air of deliberate style rather than prison-mandated utility. And she is? Jace inquired quietly. Tech-Car's bioluminescent eyes dimmed slightly. Orin. Arrived 3 weeks ago. Speaks rarely. Perhaps feeling their gaze, Orin opened her eyes fully, deep violet irises that seemed to reflect light that wasn't there, and regarded Jace with an expression of mild curiosity. Then, with an almost imperceptible nod, she returned to her meditative posture. Right? Jace muttered. Friendly bunch. Over the next week, Jace learned the unwritten rules of Delvar 9. Each morning began with a work assignment transmitted directly to the neural implants. For Jace, this meant 12-hour shifts maintaining the facility's deteriorating power grid. The work itself wasn't difficult. The Empire's technology was advanced but not unfamiliar, but the conditions were brutal. Temperatures in the maintenance shafts plunged well below freezing, and the guard were liberal with shock batons for those who worked too slowly. Meals were served twice daily in a cavernous hall where hundreds of prisoners from across the galaxy huddled over bowls of nutrient paste that Jay suspected was deliberately formulated to be merely survivable rather than satisfying. Occasionally, he caught glimpses of Orin across the hall, always sitting alone, her food barely touched. It was during his 8th day that Jace witnessed something unusual. He was shuffling through the meal line when a fight erupted between a group of muscular crawl warriors and several insectoid beings from the hive sectors. The dispute appeared to concern territory in the meal hall, but quickly escalated to violence. Guards moved to activate punishment protocols when Oren, who had been passing nearby, stepped between the groups. She spoke a single word, a sound Jace couldn't begin to pronounce, resonant and otherworldly. Both factions froze instantly, their aggression evaporating. The Crawl leader actually bowed his head slightly before backing away. The insectoids chittered nervously and retreated to another table. The guards looked at each other, confused but pleased they didn't need to intervene. Oren simply continued on her way as if nothing had happened. Later, in their cell, Jace couldn't contain his curiosity. So, that thing in the mess hall, what exactly was that? Oren regarded him with those unsettling violet eyes, saying nothing. The word you spoke, Jace persisted. What language was that? Him, assuming he posed no threat. Even if I agree, and I'm not saying I do, what's your plan? First step, access to central engineering. Her voice lowered further. I need to build communication device. Contact outside. Jace considered this. Getting into central engineering wouldn't be impossible. He sometimes worked adjacent areas. But building an unauthorized communication device was several levels beyond simple trespassing. I'll think about it, he said finally. Oren nodded, apparently satisfied. Good. We start tomorrow. And just like that, Jace found himself drafted into a prison escape plot by a mysterious woman who spoke ancient languages and knew Imperial security codes. As he tried to sleep, he wondered if perhaps he should have asked more questions before agreeing to consider her plan. But something about Oren made him want to trust her, despite every rational argument against it. Perhaps it was her confidence, the absolute certainty with which she spoke of escape, as if it were not just possible, but inevitable. Or perhaps it was simply that she had chosen him, out of all the prisoners, to approach with her plan. Either way, Jace knew his relatively peaceful prison existence had just become considerably more complicated. The following day, Jace's work assignment took him to the power distribution hub. Not quite central engineering, but close enough. As he worked on a faulty junction box, he subtly studied the security protocols, the guard rotations, the camera placements. Everything valuable in prison became currency, and information was the most valuable commodity of all. He was so absorbed in this reconnaissance that he almost missed the quiet presence at his side. Junction 7 needs recalibration, Oren said calmly, as if she belonged there. Jace nearly dropped his tools. What are you? How did you get assigned here? I requested transfer to technical detail. She handed him a micro-spanner, their fingers brushing briefly. Claim knowledge of Imperial power systems. Do you have knowledge of Imperial power systems? A hint of a smile. Some. Jace shook his head in disbelief, but continued working. So what's the plan here? We can't exactly walk into central engineering. No need. Oren gestured subtly toward an access panel at the far end of the room. That connects to maintenance tunnel. Tunnel leads to engineering substation. Unmonitored. How could you possibly know that? Studied facility schematics while repairing data terminal last week. Jace was beginning to suspect that Oren's assignment to Block 7 was no accident. She seemed to have been methodically gathering information since her arrival, positioning herself exactly where she needed to be. It was both impressive and slightly unnerving. Over the next several days, they established a routine. During work shifts, they would exchange information in brief, seemingly innocent conversations. Oren revealed that her plan involved 3 phases: build a communication device, contact her allies outside the prison, and coordinate their escape with an external extraction team. These allies of yours, Jace asked during a rare moment alone in a maintenance shaft. Who exactly are they? Resistance, Oren replied, her hands busy splicing wires for what was ostensibly a power coupling, but was actually becoming a subspace transmitter. Enemies of Empire. That's a pretty broad category. Safer for you not to know specifics. Jace was growing accustomed to these non-answers. And why would they risk a rescue mission for you? No offense, but you're just one prisoner. Oren paused her work, fixing him with that penetrating violet gaze. Some people are worth the risk, Jace Carter. There was something in the way she said it, a weight to her words that hinted at meanings beyond their surface. But before Jace could probe further, a warning light flashed on his neural implant. Guard approaching. They quickly concealed their work and resumed legitimate repairs. The guard passed with barely a glance their way, confirming Jace's theory that humans registered as minimal threats in this environment. It was an advantage he was increasingly grateful for. The makeshift transmitter took nearly 2 weeks to complete, cobbled together from spare parts, discarded equipment, and components Oren somehow managed to acquire through mysterious channels. During this time, Jace found himself drawing closer to his enigmatic partner in crime, though she remained frustratingly secretive about her past. He learned small things. She preferred cold to heat, could go days with minimal sleep, and occasionally hummed melodies in a scale his human ears found hauntingly beautiful but slightly discordant. Once, when he mentioned his hometown of Seattle, she surprised him with knowledge of Earth geography, describing the Pacific Northwest with unexpected accuracy. "You've been to Earth?" he asked, astonished. "Studied it," she corrected. "Important strategic location. For the Resistance?" She didn't answer, but her silence was telling. The day they finally activated the transmitter was the day everything changed. They had smuggled the device to an isolated maintenance shaft near the facility's exterior, where the ice walls were thinnest. Oren input a complex series of codes, and the makeshift device hummed to life. She spoke quickly into the transmitter, using a language Jace had never heard. Fluid and musical, with consonants, facility was initiating lockdown protocols. "We need to move now," Jace urged, fingers dancing across unfamiliar controls. Oren slid into the co-pilot's seat, immediately interfacing with the navigation system. Launching, the ship lurched forward, clearing the bay doors just as they began to close. Sat on the narrow bunk, head in his hands, trying to reconcile the Oren he thought he knew with this new reality. Princess Oren Talis, heir to a fallen empire, leader of a resistance movement. Had everything been a calculation on her part? Their growing closeness, the moments of vulnerability, all strategic moves to ensure his cooperation? The thought left a hollow feeling in his chest. Hours later, a soft knock at the door roused Jace from uneasy sleep. "Enter," he called, sitting up. Oren stood in the doorway, somehow looking both regal and uncertain. She had changed from prison garb into a simple gray uniform that nonetheless carried an air of authority. "May I speak with you?" she asked formally. Jace gestured to the space beside him on the bunk. She hesitated, then sat, maintaining a careful distance. "I owe you truth," she began. "Full truth. I'm listening." 3 years ago, Galvan Empire attacked Alden Imperium. Swift conquest. My family, parents, siblings, executed. I escaped with loyal guards. Her voice remained steady, but Jace could sense the pain beneath her words. Since then, gathering allies, building resistance, working to reclaim what was taken. "I'm sorry about your family," Jace said, his anger softening. I can't imagine." "Thank you." She touched a small pendant at her throat. Something new, perhaps retrieved from storage on the ship. "This contains data vital to resistance. Dynasty encryption codes, military protocols, location of hidden resources. Had to be protected at all costs." "Is that what was in your tooth?" She nodded. "Partial data only. Insurance. Complete data here." She indicated the pendant. "Retrieved from ship's secure storage. So this whole time, you were carrying information that could potentially overthrow an empire?" "Potential only. Resistance still small. Growing but small." Jace leaned back against the wall. "And now what? You go back to being a princess, leading your people from some hidden base." Oren's expression grew troubled. "Complicated. Some want restoration of monarchy. Others prefer a new system. Democracy, perhaps." She looked directly at Jace. "I am uncertain. Throne is burden. Responsibility. Not sure it is right path. You're considering not reclaiming your title? Considering all options." Her hand moved unconsciously to her pendant again. "Heritage important, but freedom also important. For everyone." Jace studied her, seeing new dimensions to the woman he'd come to know. Not just a princess in hiding, but a leader wrestling with profound questions about duty, identity, and the future. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked softly. "Because your opinion matters to me," she replied with surprising candor. "You see people as they are, not titles or species. Rare quality. Valuable. Even though I'm just a human engineer. No such thing as just human." Jace Carter. For the first time since he'd known her, Oren smiled fully, a transformation that made his breath catch. "Humans remarkable." Adaptable. Resilient. Like you. The way she looked at him, with genuine admiration, perhaps something more, made his earlier doubts seem petty. "I'm still processing all this," he admitted. "Finding out your cellmate is secret royalty isn't exactly an everyday occurrence." Understandable. She rose to leave. "Rest. When we reach Fleet, many decisions to make." At the door, she paused. "For what it's worth, I never lied about important things. About needing you. About trusting you." After she left, Jace lay back on the bunk, replaying their conversation. Despite everything, he believed her. The connection they had formed in that frozen prison cell wasn't fabricated. Unusual, unexpected, but real nonetheless. When the ship finally emerged from hyperspace, Jace joined the others in the cockpit. Before them floated a scattered collection of vessels, some military, others clearly repurposed civilian crafts. Not the imposing armada he had half expected, but a ragtag fleet of survivors and believers. "The Resistance," Tarn announced with evident pride. 2 years of gathering, growing stronger each month. Oren stood tall as their ship approached the largest vessel. A battle cruiser. "Him. I would not be here." The commander looked at Jace with new interest. "We are in your debt, sir." "Just Jace is fine," he replied uncomfortably. "I didn't do anything special." "Modesty," Oren commented with a hint of a smile. Another admirable quality. They were escorted to the ship's command center, where strategic displays showed the positions of Imperial forces across the galaxy. Jace was struck by the scope of the conflict, and by how significantly outnumbered the Resistance appeared to be. A heated discussion was already underway among senior officers regarding next steps. Some advocated immediate action, leveraging the intelligence Oren had gathered. Others counseled patience, building further strength before confronting the Empire directly. Throughout the debate, Oren listened carefully, asking occasional pointed questions. Jace, standing to the side, found himself impressed by her strategic thinking and diplomatic skill. This was clearly not someone who had merely inherited a title, but a leader who had earned the respect of her followers. When the meeting concluded, Oren was escorted to private quarters to rest and fully debrief with intelligence officers. Jace was shown to guest accommodations, sparse, but infinitely more comfortable than his prison cell. Hours later, as he was familiarizing himself with the ship's systems, there was a knock at his door. He opened it to find Oren, now dressed in a simple blue uniform rather than formal regalia. "May I enter?" she asked, her formal manner softened slightly. "Of course." Jace stepped aside. "I expected you'd be busy with royal duties for days. Needed break from questions, strategy sessions." She examined his quarters. Comfortable. Luxury compared to Block 7. She smiled slightly. "True." After a moment's hesitation, she continued. "Council wants announcement tomorrow. Official return of Princess. Beginning of campaign to reclaim throne." "That's good, isn't it? What you've been working toward?" Oren paced the small room, uncharacteristically restless. "Perhaps. But question remains, what kind of leadership does Galaxy need now? Is monarchy answer, or part of problem? What do you believe?" She stopped, turning to face him directly. "I believe in freedom, justice, cooperation between species." Her voice grew passionate. Alden Imperium was flawed, benevolent compared to Galvin, but still hierarchical. Still unequal. "You're thinking of creating something new," Jace realized. "Not just restoring what was lost." "Yes." Her violet eyes searched his. "Radical idea. Many will resist. Tradition, powerful force. But if anyone could change their minds, it would be you." Jay stepped closer. I've seen how people respond to you, how they trust you. Not because of your title, but because of who you are. Who am I, Jace Carter? She asked softly. After everything, prison, escape, revelation of identity, who do you see? It was a profound question, one that made Jace consider carefully before answering. I see someone remarkable, he said finally. Someone who could have used her royal status to demand better treatment in prison, but chose to endure the same hardships as everyone else. Someone who had every reason to be bitter and vengeful, but instead thinks about creating a better future. Someone who values a random human engineer's opinion when she has admirals and commanders at her disposal. He took her hand, a boldness that surprised them both. I see, Orin. Princess or not, that's who I've come to care about. Her fingers tightened around his. During imprisonment, maintained distance. Necessary for mission. But found myself drawn to you. Unexpected. Inconvenient. A faint smile touched her lips. Impossible to ignore. The admission hung between them, a bridge across their different worlds. So what happens now? Jace asked. Tomorrow you announce your return. And then what? Negotiations. Coalition building. Eventually, confrontation with Empire. She hadn't released his hand. Would you stay? Resistance needs engineers. Power systems specialists. Is that the only reason you want me to stay? Orin's composure faltered slightly, revealing vulnerability beneath royal poise. No, she admitted. Not only reason. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Slowly, Jace raised his free hand to her face, tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. She leaned into his touch, eyes closing briefly. I've never kissed a princess before, he murmured. I've never kissed a human before, she countered. Their lips met tentatively at first, then with growing certainty. It was a crossing of boundaries, species, rank, worlds apart. Yet it felt entirely natural, inevitable even. When they separated, Orin smiled with genuine happiness, a rare expression that transformed her typically serious features. Decision made, she said softly. Tomorrow, we'll announce not return of princess seeking throne, but formation of new coalition. Equal representation for all species, all worlds, including humans. That won't be popular with everyone, Jace warned. Most important changes never are. She straightened, once again the leader, but with a new lightness to her bearing. But with right allies, right partners, possible. The implication was clear. Not just an offer to join the resistance, but to stand beside her as she forged a new path forward, one that challenged centuries of galactic tradition. I'm in, Jace said simply. Whatever comes next. As they stood together, the vastness of space visible through the viewport, Jace marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a frozen prison cell to the brink of galactic revolution, all because he'd been assigned to Block 7 alongside a woman he'd mistaken for just another prisoner. Life, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of humor, and perhaps, just occasionally, a sense of justice too. The next morning, when Orin addressed the assembled fleet, Jace stood nearby, not as a prisoner, not as a subject, but as a partner. Her speech, broadcast across resistance channels, spoke not of reclaiming a throne, but of building a future where no species or world would be subjected to imperial rule again. We fight not for a crown, she declared, her voice resonant with conviction, but for a galaxy where all may speak, all may choose, all may thrive. The Alban Imperium of old is gone, as it should be. What rises in its place will be stronger, more free. When she extended her hand toward Jace, inviting him forward to stand beside her, the message was clear. This new coalition would transcend old boundaries, old prejudices, old hierarchies. As the gathered crowd erupted in cheers, some enthusiastic, some uncertain, but all united in purpose, Jace and Orin exchanged a private glance that spoke volumes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would be many, they would face them together. Princess and engineer, alien and human, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of places, and in doing so, changed the course of a galaxy. The prison on Delvar 9 had meant to break them. Instead, It had forged something unexpected, something revolutionary, a partnership that would reshape worlds. They had met in a prison camp, yes, and for a time, he hadn't known she was a princess. But in the end, that hardly mattered. What mattered was who they chose to be now, together, looking toward a future filled with both danger and possibility, but above all, hope.